Hello everyone, this is Bama Striker 9 and I have a very special video today. This is a youth scouting tip. This is a major youth scouting tip that I've discovered recently with the help of a subscriber. His name is Steven. That's all he wanted me to tell you guys. His name's Steven. He doesn't want any other notoriety except for that. He knows who he is and he doesn't have a YouTube channel or anything. But he pointed this out and I have since tested it several times. And it is amazing, guys. This is how to get your youth players' physical stats to grow. Now, if you've played FIFA 15 and FIFA 14, you know that when you add a player, usually the physical stats stop growing. Now, Brian Fogden, if you followed my Youth Heroes of AFC Wimbledon series, you'll know he is one of the first players we added to our squad in that series. He did not make it to May. And at the time, I was very upset with that. And I was like, man, he didn't make it to May. He didn't get the big bump. But it turns out it was a blessing in disguise. And what we found out, what Steven found out, was the players that do not make it to May, that do not go through the May bump, actually have the ability to grow in the physical stats category. Now, it's not a end-all be-all. There are definitely some rules here. And I did a couple test simulations, and we will go through that. And I will show you some details. But I wanted to show you Brian Fogden first because he is the player that we added to the squad. He did not make it to May. At the time we were mad, he started out as a 57. You can go back to the very first episode of Youth Heroes of AFC Wimbledon, see what his actual attributes are, and see that he started as a 57. He has since grown, and he's been one of the best players we have on the team. He has potential to be special. He will be a 90-plus player. So you can actually see in this season alone, he's had a 7.0 average. He scored 4 goals for us, 7 assists, 7 clean sheets he's been a part of. He's a really good central attacking midfield player. 19 years old, 69 overall, and will be a 90-plus player when it's all said and done. But the important thing to note is look at how all of his attributes are going up simultaneously. Very good, steady growth across the board. Now let's take a look at another player that did make it to May, who actually is higher rated at this age than Brian Fogden was, but in my opinion is a worse player. And all we have to do to find that player is to go down 2 here. 1, 2. Adriano Catarino. Now, Catarino was injured briefly, so that's why he's got minus stats. But I also find that very interesting. Those stats will not go back up. You will notice that Catarino, if you go back and watch, made it to May. He made the transfer bump. He got the big bump overall. But his physical attributes are terrible. I mean, his sprint speed, this is for a central attacking midfield player, are really, really poor. And if you look at some of his technicals are better than Fogden, especially if you look at, let's take a look at dribbling. So Catarino is a 68 on the dribbling. Fogden's a 57. You would think that would make that big of a difference, but honestly, it really does not. Fogden seems to dribble the ball just fine. So if you compare both of these guys, Brian Fogden and Adriano Catarino, Catarino does have some stats that are better overall, but in my opinion, Fogden is the far superior player and has actually the better long-term potential growth. And it'll be interesting to see at the end of this series just where these players are. So, again, I wanted to point that out. Fogden, 19 years old, 69 overall, has potential to be special. Catarino, 17 years old, has potential to be special, and he's 69 overall. But he has not grown one bit physically. Fogden has. Now, let's take a look at one of the simulations that I did that will show you exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, I used Real Madrid as a squad so I could make sure to get good scouts and have plenty of money and everything. So the first thing we'll do is I'll show you the list of the players here, starting with their ages. Now, remember, this is in 2020, so this is 4 years later. So the youngest players in my team are, in fact, 20-year-olds. And we will take a look at each of these guys individually, and I will tell you where they started and when I added them, either pre-May or post-May, and the results are absolutely consistent with what Steven predicted when he told me about this, and I think they are truly phenomenal results, and it's something that is worth considering if you're doing your own youth career mode. So we go all the way down the list here. We have, I can't remember how many guys it is exactly, but it's quite a bit. and it stops right there with Gonçalves, our left back. Okay, so let's start with Nils DePaul. He is a goalkeeper. We added him pre-update, actually, pre-May. When we added him to the squad, he was a 70 overall with 84 to 94 potential. He never increased one bit. Now, all my players I tried to send out on short-term loan didn't do any of the glitches or anything, but I did try to loan them out. Now, this guy, Hyun-Jun Maluda, was another guy that we added, and we added him pre-May also. He was between a 51 and a 57 overall with 76 to 84 potential. He actually has gone up, but he hasn't gone up that much, but he did increase a little bit, and he's up to a 62. I can't remember where he started out exactly. I think at 55 maybe. The last two guys here, Villegas Novo Neto, he came into the squad after May. He was between a 58 and a 62, 83 to 89 overall. And he has gone up some over the years, but not a whole lot. Again, he's up to 65 now. I think he went up 4. I think he started at a 61. And finally, Jung Han Guthridge started at a 66 and has not gone up 1 point, and he was added post-May. So the results for the goalkeepers are very confusing. It doesn't really, in my opinion, from the test that I've done, it doesn't seem to matter when you add the goalkeeper. So in my opinion, there's no reason to not allow the goalkeeper get to the May bump. You might as well let them get that May bump because they will definitely go up in rating overall then, and they may or may not grow thereafter. Now, on the right backs, we have some interesting results also, and we will discuss these a little more in depth as well. Jurgit Croft was a guy that I allowed to make it to May, and as you can tell, his physical attributes haven't gone up one bit. He's a heavily defensive-minded player. When he entered the squad, he was approximately 61 to 65. If I remember correctly, he was a 64 overall. He's only gone up 6 over the course of 4 years. When he started, his potential was 79 to 85, so showing great potential, but he never has reached that. And again, his physical attributes never did go up. The other right-back player was Mitsuharu Bentivoglio. Now, when he came to the squad, we added him pre-May. He was a right-back playmaker, 75 to 93 overall potential, but his overall was 40 to 48. I think when he joined, he was a 45. He's actually gone up 10 in that time period, and his physical attributes are, in fact, better than Jurgit Croft. Now, the only thing is, look at his marking, stand tackle, slide tackle. They're very poor. So this is where I was saying it's still very much, you have to study it. It's not a written in fact rule of every single player you need to add before May. Not at all. But there are certain players that we're going to show that you need to consider going ahead and adding them before May. I think these next two players are an excellent example. The first one is Brian Mattiello. When we added him, his overall was a 48. That's right, he's already gone up 21 in the space of 5 years, or 4 years, however long it is, 4 or 5 years. And his potential was 84 to 90 when we added him. Now, had we let him go to May, he would have gotten a bump. But I can tell you his physical attributes started out just as low as the next player, which is Mies Graflin. And he was a high 40 type acceleration, low 50 sprint speed type player. And his jumping was also as low as Mies Graflin. It was like in the mid-60s, I believe. And look how much his have gone up. The thing where he is struggling a little bit is the marking, stand tackle, and slide tackle. However, they have consistently gone up also. If I had been playing with this player during that time period, I imagine he would be an even higher rated player, Brian Mattiello. So again, this player, although 12 overall rating lower than Mies Graflin, in my opinion, is almost as good. And I know that's a very strange thing to say, especially for the guy who is younger that has a much higher rating. But he has gone up that much, 21 points in a matter of 6 years or 5 years. So definitely something to consider when adding a center back if you want to get those top physical attributes. Now, when this guy peaks, it might be 3 or 4 years down the road, and he might peak at a low 80. But I guarantee you when this guy peaks at a low 80, he will be a better overall center back then when this guy peaks at his overall potential is now a high, I think it's actually potential to be special. Let me look it up here. It is. It's 85 to 91. And when we added him, it was post-May. He was 63 to 67, and he was a 67 overall. So he's gone up 14 in 4 years. Now, again, he's grown mighty fine for a center back. And once again, is another reason why I'd say if it is a center back, you might want to consider letting them go to May. But his physical attributes are never going to grow. They are going to remain that poor the entire time. And that is something to consider because look at that stamina, 59. You're not going to get a whole lot out of him. This guy's stamina is good long-term potential here. So, important things that you have to consider. If you want to let these guys go to May, you run the risk of ruining them physically. So Leveke Gonçalves is the only left back that we added. And he did not make it to May also. We added him pre-May. He is up to a 74 overall left back. He does, I believe, have potential to be special, even though it's not showing up. He is 85 to 91 potential when we added him. He was a 55 overall when we added him. So he's up 19 in the matter of 6 years. That's how long he's gone up 19 points in 6 years. And when he started, he was a defensive-minded player. So look at his marking. 82. Stand tackle, 80. Slide tackle, 85. His acceleration, 80. Sprint speed still going up, 66. When he started, he was horrible in those categories. Had we let him get to May, he probably would have a little bit higher marking, stand tackle, and slide tackle right now, but his physical attributes would be desperately low. I mean, they were like in the 50s or lower, if I remember correctly, when he started. But that shows you how much his physical attributes have gone up. Where he is lacking and why he's so behind overall rating is the crossing. He's a 51. But he is a left back. He still does okay when he pushes up to cross the ball. And he is a good player. So, again, it really depends. This guy, when I added him, he was a 52 to 56. I'm going to give some stand-fast rules at the very end of this that I think you should live by. But this guy is definitely one of the examples I wanted to make of adding before May. I had 3 right mids to discuss here, and 2 of them did not make it to May, and 1 of them did. And you can look and tell which one made it to May. It's Fiden Rusin, a 80 overall right mid, has potential to be special, and the 2 guys that didn't are Kevin Ollie and Carranza Rodin. And when you look at these attributes for all 3 of these players, you're going to say, well, yeah, these other 2 guys are better. So let's take a look at them right now. Let's start with the guy who's supposed to be the better player, Fiden Rusin. There you can see his attributes. Really poor physical attributes for a guy who's supposed to be a pacey right mid or right attacking type player. Yeah, he's got some fantastic technicals. But is this the type guy you want to have pushing up your right? Is this Gareth Bale for you? And the answer is simple. It's no. He will never, ever reach physical potential if you keep him in the squad. And now there is the potential you can sell these guys to other squads, and sometimes their physical attributes do go up. That does happen. But do you want to have to risk getting rid of the guy and then maybe not being able to get him back? Now, let's take a look at Carranza Rodin. 1 year older, much better physical attributes. He's continuing to grow. I guarantee you in 3 to 4 years, this guy would have close to 90 acceleration and sprint speed, probably mid-80 at the very worst. His crossing will have caught up pretty close to where Fiden Rusin's is, and this guy will be the better player. Even though he is currently 6 behind and he's a year older, this is the guy that you would want to play with. I can almost guarantee you that you'd want to play with that guy over this guy. Again, stamina is a big factor as well. Kevin Ollie is even worse. He is 10 points off of him, but in my opinion is still a better player. He is even older, and when I take a look at Kevin Ollie, when we added him, let's see here. He was a 47 to 55, 75 to 89 attacker, and when we added him, he was a 50. He's gone up 20 points. 20 points he's gone up in 6 years, and who knows how much higher he can go. I think he'll be a low 80 player when it's all said and done, but I think his physical attributes will continue to go up. Carranza Rodin, when we added him, he was a 45 to 50 overall, 75 to 93 potential, and when we added him, he was a 52. He's gone up 22 points. 22 points this guy's gone up in 5 years' time. And yeah, I mean, the physical increases speak for themselves. Fijan Rusin, who we added post-update, post-May, let me find him very quickly, was a 67 to 71. He started at a 70. He has 87 to 93 potential. Again, he does have potential to be special, just like Karan Zarodin. He has only gone up 10 in 4 years' time period. And again, in my opinion, is a far worse player. Now, unfortunately, only had 2 center mids, and both of them actually made it to the May bump. I didn't have one that did not. We'll start with Hun Jun Kamara. He was a 69 to 73 overall rated player when we added him, 86 to 92 potential, and guess what? He hasn't gone up 1 point. When we added him, he was a 73, and he remains a 73. Not one attribute has gone up the entire time that we've added this player. Steph DeKegel, when we added him, was a 67 to 71, 83 to 89 defensive-minded center mid. He was a 70 overall when we added him. He has gone up 1 point, one single point in 4 years' time period. He does have excellent technical attributes, as you can see, and is more of a center defensive mid-type player, but he has not gone up. And I don't know if that's what it has to do with the bump. But again, his physical attributes have been stunted. I wish I did have another center mid that I could show you that actually did, that we added beforehand, but I don't have a true center mid. I have a center attacking mid that we'll show you. But these guys, neither one of these guys have gone up, and both of them made it to May. Here is the central attacking midfield player that I was just referring to that did not make it to May when we added him. It's Ankagren Drexler. He was a central attacking midfield player, 46 to 58 overall. When we added him, 75 to 94 potential. We added him just before May, actually in April. And when we added him, he was a 54. He has gone up, no, I'm sorry, he's a 52. I said that wrong. He has gone up 20 points in that time period. And again, his physical attributes have all gone up. He is a very good player and is an exciting prospect. So he will definitely be a high 80 type player. Massimo Vermelion was a right winger that we allowed to go to May. When we added him, he was 58 to 62 in May, 76 to 82. So he was a showing great potential when we added him, right wing player. He was a 60 overall. He's only gone up 4 in 4 years time period. His physical attributes haven't increased at all, and his technicals have only gone up a little bit. The next player I want to show you is Joyce Villa, a left winger. 60 to 64 overall, and when we added him, he was post-May update, 74 to 80 potential. He is still showing great potential because when we added him, he was on the very high end. He was a 64. He has gone up 8 points. His physical attributes have not gone up at all, but he has grown in other areas. But again, not a good left wing type player if those physical attributes never go up, even though he is showing great potential. The last 3 guys I want to show you, in my opinion, are the most important, and they are the strikers. And we had 3 guys. We had 2 that I added before May, 1 that I let go past May. The first guy we'll look at is Carranza Pratt. He is a 66 overall striker, 21 years old. We added him pre-May. When we added him, he was a 48 to 56 overall, 72 to 86 potential. So we didn't know exactly where he was, but I can tell you when we added him, he was a 51. He has gone up 15 points in 5 years. His physical attributes have all climbed up steadily. I think he started in the high 40s in terms of acceleration and sprint speed, but he's continuously grown at a very nice click and is now a 66 overall. I think he probably will top out in the high 70s, possibly low 80s, but he is showing great growth. The next player I want to show you is Miranda Ribeiro Toniolo Defende. Has potential to be special striker, 78 overall at 21 years old. And as you can tell just by me switching over to the attributes, he did not make it to May. He did make it to May. He received the post-May bump, and it was a big one for him. He went from, he was a 60 to 64 overall, 80 to 86 physically strong striker. When we added him, he was a 64. He has gone up 14 points. It's all been in the technical and the mental side. Shot power and all that's all gone up very nicely. He actually is an exceptional player, but he is, he's slow. He is a tall guy, actually. Let's take a look at him here. And when you see, he's actually 6'3" from Greece, and he does have poacher, aerial threat, distance shooter, complete forward, and clinical finisher. And he's a good player, don't get me wrong, but those physical attributes are really poor. And part of me wonders if I had added him pre-May, what he would actually turn out to be. And we'll never know that. But what we can compare him to is the next player, and he also has potential to be special, even though it's not showing up anymore because he just turned 22. But that's Vázquez Stolle. He was one of the first players that we added. He's a striker, 79 overall. He's just 1 year older than Defendi. And you can look at his stats. This is for Real Madrid. I mean, and this is me simulating the matches. He has 19 goals. But look at that, guys. A striker from your youth academy who has 95 acceleration and 93 sprint speed. He has grown that much, all the way up. You would not believe where, when I tell you where he started, you're not going to believe me. His potential was 86 to 94. And I added him pre-May, okay? I added him in March. And when I added him in March, he was a 53. A 53. He's gone up 26 points in 6 years. And in those 6 years, he has grown to those physical attributes, and he still has potential to be special. Another 3 or 4 years, this guy will be a low 90 player. And that right there that is it. If you want to play a long-term potential career mode with a youth squad, this is what you have to realize. You need to now consider adding players before May. I know I've said it so many times in this, but I'm going to give you the tips that I think you need to follow in order to do this. Okay, so these are all of the youth players that I added into the Real Madrid squad, and let's just go around the line here and take a look at these guys. The front four, your strikers, your central attacking midfield players, your left and right wingers, your right mids, these are the guys that you seriously need to consider adding before May. Now, I will give you a couple hard, fast rules here. If they are looking like they're going to be on the extreme low end when you add them, this is another reason if you've seen any of my other tutorials, and you know how to scout these youth players, which we've shown how to do in previous episodes, this is why you'd want to scout them. Because if you find out their overall is like a low 40, it's going to take time. And then that's when you just have to make that decision. You have to say, all right, am I going to invest years, 5, 6, maybe even more years, loaning this player out and allowing them to grow by loaning this player out, and then they can reach their eventual potential, or they might not even reach that eventual potential, but you'll be able to play with them. Or do you want to allow them to get to May, get the bump, but then physically they're stalled? Because until FIFA corrects that, the players that make it to May, I've not seen one player that's made it to May that has increased physical stats. And so unless that changes, that's going to be the case. So that's the determination you have to make. In my opinion, the only players that you should consider doing that with would be your center backs and your center defensive mids, the guys that are maybe going to be slower anyway. If they've got good enough stamina and you feel comfortable where their physical attributes are at that time, then go ahead and let them make it to May and get their bump, because they will get big defensive bumps and it will be helpful for you. If you don't like where they are, then by all means do like this Mattiello guy, add him early, and his overall rating is not as good as Graflin, but I'm telling you, he's just as good of a player as he is, even though he's 12 under the rating. Same thing with the wingers. If you're going to be more defensive-minded, you might want to consider letting them go to May. You'll get that overall rating increase. They will be slower. In my opinion, after seeing Gonçalves, this guy has just gone up. He's got pretty decent sprint speed and acceleration, and he's turning out to be a really good player. Plus, he can mark and tackle very well also. I think it's a no-brainer to add these guys before May also. Definitely the wingers, and then you just kind of have to make a judgment call on the center mids. But the type players you want to add are, you want to obviously get the highest potential players still. You want to scout the same way you've been scouting in terms of getting the highest potential players in. However, in my very first video, I told you wait to start scouting in November because you want to get them to May. We are almost completely going against that now. You want to start scouting these guys as soon as possible every single year and make the determination within that year of whether you want to add them before May or not. Because once they get to May, then you have to make the decision of, okay, this guy's not going to increase physically, so do I want to add him and just get the money out of him and sell him? And then when you sell him, he might go to another club and actually grow, because I have noticed that when you sell the player to other clubs, they can grow physically. And so that might be a good strategy for some of your players long term. But if you want to keep them in your squad and increase their attributes where they're growing on their own, then you need to add them before May. So you want to start scouting in August. You want to, once you have the ability to scout them and find out what their overall rating is, you want to do that as soon as possible. In my opinion, any player that has a potential over 80 and has an overall of, when you add them, once they turn 16, when you add them over 55, is an automatic addition before May. Add that player all day long, every day, with the one exception of possibly the goalkeepers, because the goalkeepers have just been completely inconsistent. But any outfield player, including center backs, if they're over 55, unless you just absolutely know that center back is going to have excellent physicals to start with and you can allow him to go to May, go ahead and add that person over 55 before May, as long as their potential is over an 80. And I think that the long-term results for you will be much better. And that, I think that's for any player across the outfield. So keep that tip. Any player that's under that 55, between 50 and 55, I think is more of a coin toss. You have to just weigh it and say, okay, do I want to sell this player, or do I want to go ahead and let him get to May and then sell him and just use him for money, and then maybe he goes to another club and I continue to scout him and then we add him down the road? Yeah, you have that option. Certainly consider doing that. Anybody beneath 50, it takes a long time to grow. I know that I've shown a couple guys. Brian Mattiello is one who has gone up. What did I say it was? 21? I think it was 21. I think he started at 48. And he's gone up that much. But I mean, that's not a guarantee. I did have several guys that started in the 40s and they have gone up quite a bit, but it is not a guarantee for sure. But I know this completely upsets the apple cart from everything that we've previously discussed on my youth scouting tutorials, but it is true, and it's all thanks to Steven, who's sent me screenshots of his tests, which were absolutely amazing, and it's something that I'm going to be doing from now on. So there you go. So thank you for watching this youth scouting tip, this special tutorial on how to get your youth players' physical stats to grow. I realize there's not a whole lot of action. It's mainly me talking, and I have no idea how long this is actually going to turn out because I've been talking for about 30 plus minutes here. So this could actually be a very long tutorial, but I did want to point it out because I spent a whole lot of time, guys. I spent so many hours going through this and testing it and simulating and everything in order to make it work. And I will tell you, when you add these players, you've got to loan them out. That is the way to get them. Unless you're going to be playing with them, you've got to loan them out. I think short-term loans are the way to go. That way you can loan them out twice in 1 year in some cases. But you've got to loan them out, especially if you're not going to be playing with them, and let them develop, and they will grow. So there you go, guys. That is the special tip. Maybe it'll shake up the world of recruiting, or scouting, in FIFA 15. Hopefully, FIFA EA Sports will patch it so that all players' physical attributes can grow, whether you add them before or after May, and we can get back to having fun in that frame. So until next time, have a good one.